Alright guys, so as some of you probably already saw this coming, this video is going to be dedicated to the goodbye to my 2005 Jeep Grand Cherokee. So this is something that I wasn't really planning on doing right at the moment, but as a lot of you guys know, I do have three cars right now. I have an M3, an M5, and I also have this Jeep, which I bought about 4 years ago. So pretty much since I moved from Ohio to Florida, I really haven't been driving my Jeep. And the Jeep was really my second car when I lived in Ohio for over 3 years. I lived there and I had a 335i for a while, and I drove the Jeep with that, and then I have the M3 and I drove that with the Jeep. And eventually I actually picked up an E39 M5, which a lot of you guys have followed the channel for. You followed the channel for the M5 and the M3, and I did do some Jeep mods here and there, but what has happened is I found myself pretty much barely driving it. It's literally just sits in this corner outside and just collects dust and rain and dirt, and I really don't drive it. I mean, I drove it down here from Ohio with 55,000 miles and some change, and it pretty much still has about 155,000 miles and some change. So if that says anything, you can pretty much see that I'm really just not using it. I like it, and it's been really good to me, but it just doesn't make sense. Having three cars is a lot of stress for me, and also a third car that I just barely drive is hard to justify having around, and justifying the maintenance and the mods and insurance and things like that. So with that said, I do want to dedicate this video to kind of one of the last goodbyes to my Jeep Grand Cherokee. I've had so many good memories to it. I probably will do a separate video, sort of a little dedication video to it, because as I was ready to sell it, well, I wasn't really ready, but I was as ready as you can be, because I do get a little bit attached to vehicles, especially ones that sort of have always been there for me. This Jeep has been, believe it or not, very reliable. I've had a couple of random things that has happened over the years, as you would expect from a 100-something thousand mile Jeep. That's a 2005, so it has some age to it, and it's a Chrysler product, so you kind of expect to have a couple little quirks here and there, but it's never left me stranded. It's always been pretty good to me, despite a couple of things here and there, and I've always really liked having it around. I never really fully appreciated that until now. So as I mentioned, this will probably be one of the last videos that I've made on the Jeep. I don't really know what else to say, guys. It hasn't been an incremental part of the channel. Part of the reason for that is I haven't really had a lot going on with it. I haven't been driving it a lot. And another part of the reason is the channel was always kind of focused on more sporty oriented vehicles. The M3 was a big player, the 335i kind of started it off, and the M5 is definitely getting a lot of content as well, as it should. A lot of those owners are very interested in the different things going on for those cars. But for the Jeep, there's not as much of a following, but I definitely have at least a dozen or 2 dozen people that are always excited about the Jeep mods and the Jeep things. And guys, I hear you loud and clear. It's actually been such a fun journey to have such a tight-knit group of people that are interested in these things. I have the 4.7 liter V8. It's a 5-speed. It's a 4-wheel drive all the time. Balls to the wall. Great vehicle in any sort of inclement weather, and besides the gas mileage, I think it looks great. I think it's performed really good for what it is, and I bought it for $6 grand in I think it was it 2015? Yeah, 15. So I've had it for 4 years, and right now I think is the time to say goodbye. What's going on, guys? I don't even remember exactly where I left off in this video, but currently I am in the Jeep, going to be one of the last rides I'm taking in this thing. It's definitely bittersweet. I am a little bit sad, as I probably mentioned in other clips, but what I'm going to do is make sure it's filled up with gas. I did a full detail, interior, exterior, got everything ready, took all my stuff out, you know, that whole thing. So right now I'm actually going to get an oil change in the Jeep. It's going to be one of the last rides in this thing. AC is still cold. It has its old character as to 4 years later still doing its thing, which is what I loved about this thing. Is it actually, you know, never left me stranded, has always been reliable. I could always jump into it, go to the store, go to, you know, grab a coffee, especially like in the deep winter time in Ohio, you know, when it was 5 degrees out. She'd just start right up. You know, I had a battery that I replaced at one point, but other than that, it's been such a good vehicle. So right now we're getting an oil change. I think it's just the right thing to do. I don't know about you guys, but handing off a vehicle that needs like an oil change and tires and all this stuff, I mean, unless you're really negotiating the price with that, it just seems like the right thing to do here. So it needs an oil change. It's been 5 or 6 or 7,000 miles since the last one. So I'm gonna go do that, and then I will be handing the keys over to the new owner. Guys, pretty much on the very last part, feeling kind of sad. I got oil changed, I got an air filter, and I also did a tire rotation. It was 25 bucks, and I haven't rotated the tires in at least 5,000 miles, so it was kind of the right thing to do. It's kind of funny. The people at the shop said, "Hey, can I have your information for our system?" And I said, "Well, it's pointless because I'm literally selling this vehicle today. I'm just getting a few things done, you know, before I sell it, including the tire rotation, which I wasn't sure I was going to do or not, but I ended up doing it." And one of the guys was like, "Oh, I don't see the point of that. It's not your problem, blah, blah, blah." And I didn't even say anything, but to me, like, more than anything is, for me, it's like, it's just the right thing to do. Hopefully you guys can kind of relate to it. And I also will say I'm glad I did the tire rotation, because it seems like the steering feels a little more solid now. Before I would get a little bit of feedback on the highway at higher speeds, but right now above 60, I'm not at 60 right now, but earlier the steering felt a little bit more buttoned down. So, you know, the tires, you know, maybe it was beneficial to do that, which is fine. So I'm pretty much just headed there. We are meeting at a Starbucks, which we have met before, and I'm selling it to actually, you know, a friend, someone who I know, and someone who we've actually hung out a few times. His wife is probably going to drive it for a few years, and then he's going to give it to his son, who's 14 now, so it'll be his son's first car, which is pretty cool. I remember when I was a kid, my dad actually had a Grand Cherokee, which kind of what made me want one a little bit. It was a like a 96 or something like that, so it's definitely an older body style. These ones weren't even close to being out yet, but this body style kind of, you know, it's very predictable, the Jeeps. You can always spot a Grand Cherokee on the road. But I could probably go on and on about how, you know, I like this thing and how it's been such an easy vehicle to live with. You know, the gas mileage apart, generally speaking, it's done pretty much everything I've asked it to do. You know, so I'm really happy with it, and I'm happy, really more than anything, this thing is pointless to be sitting around in the driveway, guys. I mean, whether it's this car or another car, any vehicle, you know, it's just not being used the way it would be used, the way it should be used. And, you know, it's time for a change, and it's time for someone to enjoy it. So that's the point, is I'm happy that this thing has been so good to me. Hopefully it will also be really good to, you know, the next owner. So with that said, I have no idea where this video is going to go. I don't have any plans to film more than just kind of my drive there. I have maybe, you know, 7 to 10 minutes before I get there. which is fine. But until then, I will probably do a follow-up video on the Jeep, but you guys kind of get the picture. I have 3 cars and the Jeep just sits where I'm at kind of in my life right now. It just doesn't make sense to try to have all of the cars that do all these specific things, and you know, it's more stress and it's a little bit of a headache to some extent as well, trying to maintain and keep up and keep them clean and stuff like that. So, you know, it served its purpose, and time for a new chapter for the Jeep, time for a new chapter for me. Maybe I'll get one in the future, but I think for now it served its purpose. It's ending on a high note. It's been well maintained, and we'll have to see what the future brings. So guys, if I don't film anymore, thank you for watching. Please give me a thumbs up. This was actually kind of a difficult video to film and articulate to you guys. I feel like such a big baby. This is as thinking through all these things, one of the things was I did have a Honda Accord back in the day that I had for 7 years, so that was the longest car I've ever had. That car was very easy to sell because I actually inevitably sold that for my 335, which was like pretty much the nicest car that I could buy at the time. It was like my perfect spec, 6-speed, you know, rear-wheel drive coupe, all that stuff, sport package. The Jeep I've had for 4 years, which is amazing. I've literally almost exactly on the dot 4 years, and it's been awesome. So second longest vehicle I've owned, first SUV I've owned, first Jeep, you know, if you want to call it a Jeep, I've owned, and so many good memories, guys. So JGC for Snow has probably seen its last footage on the channel. It's been awesome, it's been real, and I'll see you guys next time.